세계에서 한국 사람과 미국 사람만 관광 가지 못하는 곳이 있습니다. 바로 북한이죠. 현재 우리는 북한으로 여행을 갈 수는 없지만 금강산은 한국인이 선호하는 관광지 중 하나였습니다. 그러나 남북 관계가 경색되면서 금강산에 있는 한국 기업의 자산은 북한에 모두 몰수되었고 북한으로의 관광은 당분간 기대할 수 없는 상황입니다. 북한에 대한 핵무장 관련 국제 제재가 엄중한 상황에서 합법적으로 외화를 벌어들일 수 있는 사업은 북한에겐 관광입니다. 김정은 국무위원장 집권 이후 마식령 스키장을 비롯해 여러 관광지 개발에 나섰고 현재는 원산 갈마 지역의 리조트 단지를 완공했습니다. 김정은 국무위원장이 어린 시절 성장한 장소로도 잘 알려져 있는 원산 갈마 지역은 현재 러시아 관광객을 대상으로 영업 활동을 펼치는 것으로도 알려져 있습니다. 그렇다면 누가 북한으로 여행을 갔었을까요? 사실 북한 여행객은 중국인과 러시아인이 대부분이지만 소수로 서구권 여행객도 존재했었습니다. 지난 20년간 수백만 명이 다녀갔다고 합니다. 놀랍죠? 이들은 휴양을 목적으로 북한을 방문하는 것은 당연히 아닙니다. 새로운 환경을 경험하려는 모험적인 측면에서 도전한다고 볼 수 있겠죠. 북한 여행 기획자이자 가이드인 사이먼 코커렐은 20년 넘게 북한의 여행 상품을 설계하고 진행하며 북한에 수도 없이 드나든 고려 투어의 베테랑입니다. 그는 북한 여행의 진짜 재미는 금지와 허용의 경계에서 시작된다고 말합니다. 우리는 그를 통해서 간접적이나마 북한을 관광할 수 있습니다. 그리고 코코렐은 북한 여행 시 절대 해서는 안 되는 일에 대해서도 소개해드립니다. Let's get started. Thanks for joining us, Mr. Simon Cockerell, and the expert and then well-known businessman in the North Korean tourism and beyond. And the floor is all yours.
Thank you for having me. So I'm Simon Cockerell, and since 2002, I've been the general manager of Koryo Tours, which is the leading organization taking tourists to North Korea, as well as innovating engagement opportunities like school trips, sports trips, coordinating events there, such as the Pyongyang International Film Festival, Pyongyang International Marathon, and so on. I've worked on a number of documentary films, travel shows on TV, and a dramatic film made in North Korea, as well as many other such projects. A key specialty of mine, though, is to extend the boundaries of what visitors are able to see and do and experience when they're in the DPRK. So over the years, I've been the test subject for opening up many new cities and areas and routes around the country, which then have become available to tourists, or in some cases have not become available to tourists. Places such as Hamhung, Sinuiju, a series of factories in the Nampo area, domestic railway routes such as from Pyongyang up to Rason and beyond, domestic flight routes, and smaller sites around Pyongyang and other cities and regions too. So the reason that I do this work and that my company does this work is we feel that engagement is a positive force in a place which most people would agree is overly isolated and with a population that deserve the chance to have more interaction with the outside world, even if it's just a little tiny bit more. So we approach this apolitically and with responsibility, and we've been responsible for a very large amount of the general information that the world knows about the realities of visiting and spending time in North Korea as foreigners, as well as starting many eminent writers, students, professionals, and so on their path in working in and around DPRK and with North Korean issues.
Yeah, thanks for sharing your experience. And I have plenty of questions, but let's start with your own experience. You just say you have been involved in those documentary in films and some other hot films and so on. And what are the most memorable or successful documentary films you ever get involved in the last 10 years or so?
Well, the ones produced by my company are from longer ago. Before that, just before I joined the company, we produced the film about the North Korean football team. There's a picture of Park Do-ik behind me, actually.
Wow.
Who played in the World Cup in England in 1966. And then I was involved in the next films we made, about young schoolgirls performing in the mass games. And then the best one I've been involved in, I would say, is Crossing the Line, a documentary film about American soldiers who defected to North Korea in the early 1960s. At the time that film was made, our subject, Joe Dresnok, was still alive and living in Pyongyang. Now his family still lives there, but he has passed away. So
Okay.
that I think is probably the most unusual at the time, very unknown story. But I think that that's the most important and surprising story that I've been involved in terms
Mm.
of documentary films. But there have also been many other films made there that we've assisted with. You know, I was partly involved in these Dennis Rodman visits
Oh yeah.
and the documentary. There's a very good documentary that was made about those trips. I helped with that a little bit. So we offer some assistance to people producing such things.
Okay, okay, that's interesting. Dennis Rodman, he is one of the, most popular figures in the North Korean political scenes, and he actually made a splash here and there, and we like to, to listen to. And then, let's move on to your tourism business, and then usually those tourism starts from Beijing or Dandung, and then go to Pyongyang, and then Kaesong and Wonsan and Paektusan, Mountain Paektu. That is
Mhm.
that really just typical or arrange the tourism that's the itinerary, or is it just typical for your own company and other say the tourism company too, or is there any other variation in it?
Yeah, so actually, that's not a typical route. First of all,
Oh.
I'll establish there's the market before 2020, before it was shut down, was the vast majority of the tourism field was Chinese companies, Chinese
Ah.
tourists,
Mm,
hundreds of thousands per year. And
mm,
their route is very much the same thing over and over. Train from Dandong to Pyongyang, stay 3 nights in Pyongyang, which is Pyongyang city tour, and then 1 day trip to Kaesong and to Panmunjom, back to
mm,
Pyongyang,
mm,
and then return to Dandong by train. But this
mm,
is not dictated. This is what the market demands. There's not
mm,
much demand for anything beyond that. So it's affordable, large groups, classic group travel. Our market is what the North Koreans call European travel. So that just
mm,
means everyone who's not Chinese, basically.
mm,
And the demand there is for longer tours, more variation, a
mm.
lot of private tours. Still, of course, a
Italy?
private tour has North Korean guides with them,
Mm,
as every tour does. And then each of those tours is a little bit different. So the kind of classic tour, I guess, would be about 5 or 6 days. So
mm,
usually it would be maybe Nampo,
Nampo.
Myohyangsan, Pyeongseong, something like that. But then outside of winter, trips to Wonsan have been fairly common. You know, beach holidays, I'm sure
Yeah,
we'll get to this. Beach holidays, they're not really a good reason to go to North Korea for most Western tourists. There are beaches in a lot of places. It's a long way to go.
sure. The Mediterraneans and in many places.
Yeah, it's a long way to go to do something you can
Mm.
do somewhere else. People make the journey to do something different.
But
And Paektusan itself is fascinating, incredible place to visit, but very difficult. So for
mm,
tourists, the only way to go there is by plane from Pyongyang. And
mm,
usually this involves chartering a plane, which is
ah,
expensive. And
mm,
also winter there is very long.
mm,
And if you fly to Samjiyon in winter,
mm.
then you may not be able to get to the mountain. So, generally speaking, there are not that many trips to
Mm,
Paektusan just
mm,
in summer and generally larger groups because to split the cost of chartering a plane. So it's
mm,
not that common a place to visit, actually. But
mm,
these things vary a lot. It depends on the demand of the customer. So the
mm.
itinerary is not dictated from above, but what is dictated is basically the list of places which can be visited. So you can only go where you can go, and you can't go where you can't go.
So meaning that that's the designated places in some city. I mean, it's not
Yeah.
there is no forbidden cities or the areas in
Oh no,
general.
most of the country is off limits. There you can visit every province, but a couple
Mm,
of the provinces you can only visit, one small place. And even in a city that you can visit, let's say Wonsan, for example,
mm,
you can't
mm,
just go to Wonsan and then freely roam around Wonsan. When you're there, there are certain places which you can visit: the harbour side, the central square,
음,
museum, old railway station, a
음,
collection of monuments to the leaders of the country,
음,
school children's camp,
음,
um, various things like that, agricultural university, and so on.
음,
But you can't just decide you would like to go and visit this interesting building because it's interesting, or that place because you saw
음,
some people going there. You have to have a program and an itinerary, and
음.
that has to be sent in advance. But when that is done, there is usually a little bit of flexibility, but not so much.
Oh, okay, okay. That's so meaning that I think this is, very stupid statement. It is not a possible for us to go backpacking in the North Korea.
It is possible to wear a backpack, but that it is not possible to go backpacking. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one of my dream, just taking, the truck from the Jangmadang to Jangmadang, and then go to city and to city and then to just take a around and what's their real life look like. At
Yeah.
the same time, I think it's your next probably arrangement for the National Geographic or BBC World Discovery Channel. Just following up this Jangmadang people to city or the countryside to countryside. But it's very clear that the authority, the state, dictate, where to go, and you can ask about, I want to visit, or my customers and tourists, visit to client to somewhere, but you need to the advanced endorsement or permission, to go there. Wow, that's pretty big limit, but at the same time, shows the nature of the North Korean political system.
Well, it is a strict limit, but to be honest, most people expect more limitations. So, of course, from what we know about the country, we are conditioned to expect that limits are stricter. So, surprisingly, even though it is the most strict, the most tightly controlled experience that I know of, most people we take are surprised that actually there are some opportunities to do a little bit extra, or to change the itinerary, or to
Mm,
have more interaction. The same
mm.
way that when we go there, the food is
Yeah, food.
it's usually okay, sometimes really good, sometimes not so good. But people expect it to be terrible or to be non-existent. So the expectations are low, and it's not too difficult to get above
Well,
low expectations, really.
yeah, so then, now it's a Korean food. K food is everywhere. It's become very fancy and then trendy. And then do you think North Korean food, NK food, it can be, popular, in other places too?
It doesn't lend itself to social media, perhaps in the same way. So maybe not,
Okay,
but
maybe not.
it is a little. Let's say, I mean, they would say that it's
Mm,
purer. Let's say
Sure.
without too much influence from outside and so on, as if that's always a negative. That said, the food which tourists are served in hotels, for instance, of course, you don't
Mm,
only eat in hotels, but
mm,
hotels do serve food.
mm,
Sometimes this is kind of touristified Korean
yeah.
food. And as most tourists are Chinese,
Mm,
there's a Chinese element in this. So you may have
ah,
something classically Korean, like Pyongyang
mm,
cold noodles, and then
mm.
you may have mapo tofu, which is clearly Chinese food.
마포구.
Yeah, it's clearly
마파도.
that's Chinese food,
Wow.
even if it's served in Korea. So it's quite often a bit of a mix.
Mm,
And if there's a salad, it will
mm.
tend to be a Russian style salad rather than a
What is a
salad.
Russian style salad?
Has lot of mayonnaise, basically.
Oh, no,
That kind
minute.
of thing. I mean,
Okay,
I'm
okay.
sure there are many Russian salads,
Uh,
but it would be that style. So often it's a bit of a mix. But yeah, of course, the food is broadly speaking Korean food wherever you
mm,
are, and there's regional variation too. If you go to the coastal area, to Wonsan,
mm,
to
mm,
um, Rason, and so on,
Also,
there's a lot more seafood, a lot more fish.
seafood.
And if you're in the Pektusan area,
Mm.
potatoes with every meal.
Potatoes in every meal. So,
Yeah.
and then what about, I mean, Chinese tourists are, of course, understandable, but, what about the so-called, European tourists? Do they find the North Korean food interesting, or what are the most, say, popular, North Korean food among these European tourists?
So they do find it interesting. And these Western tourists, of course, they've all made a conscious choice to go to North Korea. It's
음,
nobody's first holiday. Nobody is there because they are, allied with the country politically. Nobody is there because they don't really know where they're going. There are, of
음,
course, some people collecting countries, some people trying to complete some project, but most people have looked at different places to go and have chosen to go to a place where they'll have no internet, limited connectivity with the outside world, somewhere that their family may be worried and concerned about them. So they've made a big choice and they want to get the most experience and the best possible value for themselves out of this. And of course, they have to eat. And food is something that some people are very passionate about. So people are generally keen to try local food and they would like to have as much variety as possible. So it's actually a kind of constant battle because a lot of our partners there are of the belief that people like their own food. So
음,
I've worked with many people from North Korea in China, and if you say, right, let's have lunch, they generally want to eat Korean food. That
어허,
some people will try some Chinese food and say, yeah, this is good for Chinese people. We want our Korean food. So there is a
that,
kind of assumption that, you know,
음,
Western people have to eat,
음,
Western food, whatever that may be, which I think is a hard thing to get through. So we try and point out that yes, people may not be accustomed to the taste of cold noodles, but you can never
음,
become accustomed to something unless you do it. You know,
that's right.
I mean, beer is popular in North Korea, in Pyongyang
Beer,
especially.
대동강 beer, right?
Yeah,
음,
beer is popular, but beer is not from Korea. So at some point, somebody had to introduce beer, and people who were not accustomed to it became accustomed to it. So it is
okay,
possible to develop a taste for things. And as you mentioned, Korean food is popular worldwide, and North Korean food is still Korean food, even if it's not the same. So it's not completely alien. People have
sure.
heard of, gochujang, and people have
Yeah,
heard of, various other
김치.
things.
음,
It's yeah,
right.
it's not alien food, and it can
이.
be eaten by all humans.
So that leads me to my final question. You've been in this tourism business with North Korea for such a long time, 2 or even now it's now heading to 3 decades, right? I think it's Kim Jong-un, he stepped in as a paramount leader in 2012, in 2013. And he tried to promote his own country as a tourism, attraction, the tourist, spot, a destination. Before we know that Kim Jong-il doesn't take tourism that seriously, even though he can make some, the hard cash with the, dollars. But Kim Jong-un's idea and approach might be a little bit different to the tourism. And then now the pandemic and a nuclear sanction, 2025 is a little, another, story, for the Kim Jong-un and the Kim Jong-un North Korean regime, to take on this, tourism. What is this, periodical, the change of the tourism industry for the North Korean regime? What's your take on it?
I don't have much to say about the views of the North Korean leaders because I've no idea. But there is no Ministry of Tourism, so there's not really a government body dedicated to tourism. The tourism there is operated by companies, state-owned companies, of course. They compete with each other, they compete internally, and they have what defines them as a company is that they have a profit motive. So they want to get more customers. They want more customers for their company versus another company. So there is a competitive element which will be familiar to people from around the world. It's easy for people to suggest everything is the government, but a
Mm,
state-owned company and the government are not the same thing. Every company is a state-owned company, so it's not necessarily governmental. I would suggest, though, that if you say there's been a focus on promoting tourism, there's still been no tourism for 5 years. So that is an unusual way to promote tourism by not allowing it. So they've had a tourism industry, technically, legally, since 1953. That was the establishment of their first travel company. Of course, nobody was going to North Korea in 1953. There was just ruined cities and destruction everywhere. Friendly countries, non-aligned and socialist brother countries had people visiting before then, but tiny, very, very tiny, except for some huge events. When I started working at Koryo Tours, the whole Western tourism market was something less than 500 people a year. across the whole year. That's barely one person per day. I mean,
음,
it's not even around 20 years ago, you could be there, you could go there for a week and literally not see any other tourists. It would have to be a specific week and specific areas, but you would see nobody. That is long gone. So Chinese tourism has become huge. Hundreds of thousands of people a year. It's nothing like Thailand or Jeju or anything like that, but these are still big numbers. They
야,
even
되게
brought in a limit on Chinese tourists a few years ago of 1,000 people traveling to Pyongyang per day. But that
음,
still means that in any week, let's say 1,000 people went in, and
right?
then 500 people per day traveling to Sinuiju for a day trip, 500 people going to Rason. This is,
음,
more than 10,000 per week is big numbers. Whereas the Western tourist market, the biggest
음,
year was 2012, maybe around 6,000 people in that year.
아,
So, and what's the stated capacity of the Wonsan Kalmar Resort? 20,000 people at any one time. So when
어,
people say it's built for Russians, there
음,
have been 1,000 Russians in the last year,
1000, 1000.
something like that. Yeah.
Okay,
They,
it's,
I mean, there used to be in 2019, there were more than 1,000 British people. So,
오,
so if tourism is some kind of crucial tool there, why is
음,
there none? There were hundreds of thousands of Chinese,
음,
thousands of non-Chinese, and now there are hundreds to 1,000 or more in total. So it's not quite clear what the master plan is, if there is a master plan. But the people I know, the people I deal with, they're business people, they're involved in the business of tourism. They're
음,
anxious to have it happen again. Uh, in February this year, there was a brief opening of Rason. Tourists could visit Rason, but only for 3 weeks, and then suddenly it closed again without warning and without any reason. There's a lot of guesses and speculation, but they are just guesses and speculation. And there have been other chances for people to visit. Some embassies have reopened. There have been some friendship groups, left-wing organizations did some trips. So some projects have begun. And I was there in April this year with around 200 people that I took to participate in the Pyongyang Marathon. But
음,
these are not tourists. They're not tourist visas. They may have been on a tour themselves, but their visas were supported by the DPRK Athletics Association, not by any travel company. And the marathon
음,
happens once and then it's finished. And so, what's next? There have been
음,
there are international events there which usually involve inviting people to participate, trade fairs, the Pyongyang Film Festival, and so on. But still, these are not general openings to tourism. So we still wait and see what's going to happen. But I mean, when the doors do open, I think that it's possible that initially at first, the number of places you can visit will be fewer than before because the
음,
tours that have been happening for the last 18 months or so, these Russian tours, their
음,
itinerary is very much more limited than it was before, which is a pity because, as I mentioned, I've always specialized in pushing
음,
and going to more places and opening
음,
those places.
음.
But it may well be that when they open to us again, that we won't be able to start as we were 5 or 6 years ago. We may have taken a few steps back to try
음.
and push forward a bit. So a lot remains unknown, I'm afraid.
All right. Oh, my last question is, as though you are, you are the tourism guy and you are managing many people and you saw all kinds of tourists from all over the places to North Korea. What are the no behaviors in North Korea as a tourist?
Yeah, that's a really good question and very important one. So everybody should ask that. So when we arrange a trip, we communicate with the travelers in advance, of course, by email, by phone, by WhatsApp, etc. We send information beforehand on the rules and regulations, and
음,
we also have a face-to-face briefing before they
음,
start the trip. Or if not face-to-face, we do it online or by phone. But we always have a briefing explaining some practicalities, how to use the international phone and that kind of thing, what money to spend. But it's mostly about the do's and don'ts. and
음,
it's all don'ts. You know, there's a few do's, but it's mostly don'ts. And it's fairly
okay.
straightforward, to be honest. First thing is don't break the law. Whether you agree with the law or not is irrelevant. Do not break it. But the laws are not secret, and they're
음,
not um, anything that you wouldn't assume. So, like everywhere, the normal laws: don't kill anyone, don't steal anything, don't vandalize or that kind of thing. And but beyond that, you can't criticize their leadership. So as foreigners, we're not expected to be part of their political system. So we're not expected to join in or pretend to be something we're not. But do not make any overt criticisms. Don't damage any pictures of the leaders, etc., etc. Just keep it neutral. And you can't, as tourists, you can't go anywhere without guides. So every tour group, if it's one person or 20 people, has two guides and a driver. But your guides are with you all the time. They stay in the hotel, they don't go home. You can't wander off without them. They are responsible for you. So don't do it, not because actually it's not risky for yourself, it causes a risky situation for someone else, for somebody who you shouldn't do that to. Don't compromise your guides, basically. Also, proselytizing is illegal. I mean, spreading
음,
religious
음,
activity. Being religious, of course, is not. There's plenty of religious people that go there. But taking in and spreading religious material is a crime. And,
음,
people must not do that. And if they
음,
can't obey those laws, then they shouldn't go. There are plenty of countries where those laws do not exist, and you should maybe go there. I mean, the
음,
long list of don'ts, we get very detailed, and people always have some specific questions, but it's important to know that. But it's also important to not panic. Um,
음,
Going to North Korea is not that unusual. Literally millions of people have done it. The restrictions there are real, but they're
음,
not secret. We know them in advance, and the experience there is a bit like being on a school trip. You have your
음,
guides with you. They'll tell you,
음,
right, breakfast is at 7 o'clock, and then we go to the museum of this, and then we'll do that. Then we'll have lunch. Please tell me if you're a vegetarian. A lot of it is very straightforward, um,
음,
basic tourism. It's not something to panic about. And if somebody is scared to go, then they shouldn't go, quite frankly.
음,
Why would you go somewhere that you are scared of? But if you are interested and curious, smart, intelligent, sensible, then, if you're interested in North Korea is a fascinating place to go. But the world is big. And the reason that thousands of Western tourists visited per year rather than hundreds of thousands or millions is because there are many other places to go. So I understand when people say, "Oh my God, I would never go to North Korea." Well, fine. I best of luck and go somewhere else. But for people interested in it, I assure you, it is life changing. Even with all the restrictions, even with all the things you can't do, it's a real a place that makes you think.
Thank you. Sharing your knowledge and experience, and at the same time, your excellent, the response to my questions. Thank you for more time, and then thank you, for the joining us. Okay, we will see you next time. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
만약 통일이 된다면, 남북 관계가 좋아져서 관광이 허용된다면, 우리는 이 무더운 여름을 시원한 개마고원이나 백두산에서 보낼 수도 있을 것입니다. 여러분은 만약 재개된다면 북한의 어떤 곳을 가보고 싶으신가요? 지난 강연에서 하와이대 해리슨 킴 교수가 원산 갈마 지역 해변이 하와이 와이키키보다 아름답다고 했던 것을 기억하십니까? 북한의 관광산업 자원은 경쟁력이 나름 있습니다. 물론 아직까지는 닫힌 체제 하에 북한 자체에 대한 관광 수요가 훨씬 더 높지만요. 북한의 개발되지 않은 산악지역에는 멸종위기 생물들이 있고 내셔널 지오그래픽과 같은 다큐멘터리 프로그램이 언제든 방문해 카메라로 담고 싶어하는 여러 지역들도 있습니다. 곧 업로드될 다른 영상에서는 북한의 숲 생태와 야생동물에 대해서도 다룰 예정입니다. 앞으로도 많은 관심 부탁드립니다.